So today we're going to be talking about if else in Go. So what is if else? Kind of think of it as the programming version of a crossroads. If this is true, or if this is false, or if this is, whatever, I want you to do this. Else, I would rather you do this other thing. That's basically an example of what if else stands for. So if we go ahead and get started, type in, get our base program built, and let's build our main function, just like we have to with any Go program. So in this example, if else, this very first one here, we're looking at if 7% of 2 equals 0. Now, what does that mean? What is 7% 2 equals 0? Well, if you remember, we were talking about that equals before. Basically saying it has to be 0. Now, but what's the 7% 2 mean? If we jump over to the Go spec, we can see what exactly that means. Let's see, let's scroll down here, look for it. Aha, there it is. So that's why I highlighted it. But percent means remainder. So basically 7 remainder of 2 equals 0. Then 7 is an even number. Else 7 is an odd number. That's what this whole statement means. And we're wanting to print whether it's 7 is odd or an even number. Let's go ahead and type this out. If 7, and some call this even though it's an operator, they call it a modulus, the remainder of. So it's just part of math. We say, okay, this has to equal 0. Then we want to print line and say 7 is even, else we want to print line again and then say 7 is odd number. So we're having fun here, right? Let's go over to our terminal. I had to rebuild my environment. And let's do a Go run. And we're under 5. If else. And we want to run the if else Go. Hey, wait a minute. We're missing something. What are we missing? Let's see. Did I remember to save? I forgot to save. So now we know 7 remainder of 2 does not equal 0. And that's why it says, okay, 7 is an odd number. Now, if we change this to, let's say, 8, hit save and rerun this, to say 7 is even. We didn't change the statements, we just changed the number. So this is just an easy way to see how if else works, by seeing if a number is odd or even. That's all we're really doing here, right? Okay, so let's continue on in our if else example. You don't need an else condition if you have an if statement in there. So typing if with 8, we'll have a remainder of 4 equals 0. So in other words, it's going to be 0 if we do 8 remainder of 4. That means print line 8 is divisible by 4. So now let's save and run this. 8 is divisible by 4. Likewise, if we change this to 9, now let's say this is 9, what do you think is going to happen? Nothing. It's going to skip it. That's because 9 is not divisible by 4. So with that if condition, again, it's a fork in the road in your programming. We're learning and trying to understand programming logic to the computer, saying, okay, if 9 is divisible by 4, then I want you to print this statement. But if it's not, you're not giving any instructions, so the code just continues on its merry way. But if we change this back to 8, and 8 is a number divisible by 4, and we run it, we're going to see that line now. Okay, cool. Now let's play with this a little bit more. Go to the next one. So now we're taking if num, which now we're building a variable, right? And that we're saving, and that num value is 9. Well, if num run, I typed it in again. If num is less than 0, I want you to say print line. We want the variable is negative. Now we're getting into something new. So again, this is breaking down logic. So we're putting in fork here. Here's a fork. Here's another fork. And here's an end result if these are not accurate. So it makes if and if else is so easy, especially in Go, because you don't have to do you don't need any other statements. You can bury if statements and else statements within to get the logic that you want. So let's continue on in this example. Else if num is less than 10, then what I want you to do is say print line num has 1 digit. And then we can go furthermore in our else if statements and say else. In other words, if these are not accurate, then this is what I want you to do. T print line, and we're going to say num again has multiple digits. So we'll save this. Now we have our logic built out. So let's recap this real quick. If the number variable is 9, which it is because we're setting num as 9, and you notice as I hover here, it says var num init. So the IDE here is helping us say, okay, Go is going to see this as an integer. Cool, we want it as an integer. Num is less than 0, then we're going to say it's negative. If it's less than 10, we're going to say has 1 digit. Otherwise, we're just going to say it has multiple digits. Let's see what happens. I think we all know what's going to happen. 9 has 1 digit. Because this is where it equals, because it's less than 10. So now if we say, let's change this logic to 9, and now let's run this again, what do you think our output's going to be? 9 has multiple digits. Since neither one of these are true, we're basically telling the program, then this is what I want you to do. If this outcome doesn't match this pattern, if this outcome doesn't match this pattern, then I want you to do this action. So each of these lines, line 22, line 20, and line 18 are all actions we want to take. 17, 19, and 21 are logic statements that we're asking Go to check against. So let's just go ahead and bring that back to 10, because that's what our example is here. So that's our else if and if else statements. It's fun, isn't it? It's kind of interesting. You can start building layers in your programming to get the condition and results that you want. And again, we're going to see more of this in the future as we build some programs together. But practice this, play with this example, and learn the if else. Next up, we're going to have switches.